Namaste. We are going to be doing a yin flow today that is both active and passive. I failed to send the word out that we're going to use two blocks and a bolster for today's practice. So hopefully you have those items. If you don't, you may or may not even need them. There's ways around it. Yesterday was the first class that I did coming back from Florida. I took my child down to Universal Studios and Disney and Hollywood Studios, and we had a lot of fun. But all of the walking and all of the standing and waiting can wreak havoc on your body. And even though I'm not feeling especially sore today, literally every day my feet hurt, my calves were just tight, and my low back was aching. And so I would take little segments, whether I was standing in line or even back at the hotel in the evenings, where I would just do a little bit of yoga. I couldn't get a whole practice in, but one evening I came and did the Magic Four. We did that yesterday in the gentle restorative. Another day I just did, a pigeon pose to open up the hips. I did film a couple clips at the parks that I put online. I put it on YouTube and I put it on social media in case you need ideas on how to use yoga on the go. So what I wanted to mention more than anything is that yoga is meant to help us to reduce suffering. So even if we're out in public, even if we're not able to do a formal practice, even if we're normal attire and wearing shoes, even just posing, just striking a couple poses that will target that area of discomfort, or using your breath work to drop in or to calm your nerves can be really helpful. So Ella, who is 13, she'd never been to any amusement park. It's kind of hard to believe. She had only been to the county fair once. So she had no experience with roller coasters whatsoever. And of course, she was scared because, um, she'd never experienced it before. And we talked her into riding a couple, well, not a couple, quite a few roller coasters with us. And it was so fun to just be with her in the line and to see her anxiousness kind of coming up to the surface, and her talking about it. And I was telling her, just relax and just breathe. And one of the first ones we rode, our feet did not touch the floor because we're both kind of short, and so we felt ungrounded. And halfway through the ride, she grabs my hand and we're just grabbing each other's hand really tight. And it was just really fun to kind of walk her through it in a way, and to see the joy that came across her face from facing and conquering that fear and that anxiety about trying something new. The other thing I wanted to mention, I've mentioned yesterday in class that there was a ride in Harry Potter called the Forbidden Journey, that really just, I mean, it just rocks your body and carries you in all these different directions. And on top of that, you have this simulation in front of you, and it's stimulation overload. And I was feeling so nauseous that I decided to close my eyes to shut out the simulation. And I started to use my breath, because if you think about the 8 limb path of yoga, remember the third step is asana, the fourth is pranayama, and the fifth is pratyahara. So, when you're belted and strapped in, I can't pose. So I just held on tight and I got really still and stable as I could, even though the ride was in motion. And then I was able to drop into my breath, which helped me to go to that next step, which was sensory withdrawal. And using that type of breath work not only calmed me down, but remember, diaphragmatic breathing is good for digestion. And I can honestly say I've never tried it for being nauseous, but it helped with being nauseous. So if you're ever feeling, nauseated, I highly recommend diaphragmatic breathing. There was one roller coaster that Gabriel wanted to ride called the Rocket. And I have a fear of roller coasters that go straight up in a vertical line and do a like a long drop off. I prefer the other types. And that particular one was completely vertical. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm out, you guys. And Rob is actually scared of roller coasters and decided to do it. Well, on that particular one, you may have done it before, but you get to choose music that you want to hear. And so evidently there's a list of categories of genres of music. And then once you go into the genre you want, you can pick the artist and the song. And he chose one, I think he chose ZZ Top. And he was listening to that through the whole ride. And this was where his guitar mind went. And even though it's a guitar mind, to me, he was practicing yoga in his own way. So what he did was he turned all of his attention to the music. And, you know, typically those songs are about 3 minutes, 34 seconds, or 3 minutes, 30 seconds, something of that nature. And so he knew when he got to the chorus of the song, it had already been like a minute into the song. And calculating the music and sustaining his attention on the music, he was able to get through that ride with Gabriel and conquer his fear of doing something he was scared to do. So I want to remind you, yoga is not only good for reducing suffering that you're experiencing mentally or physically, but yoga is the sustained concentration on one thing that you choose. So for me, it was the breath, and for Rob, it was the music. That's still yoga. And so when we're going through our practice today, there may be a moment where you're really focused physically in your body. There may be another moment where you're sustaining your focus on your breath. And there may be other moments where you're sending your focus to one thing in particular. So let's put our yoga into action, and I will meet you on the mat. Have your blocks set up at the top of your mat. Your bolster can be off to the side for now. And we're going to start off in tadpole. So tadpole, our legs are splayed wider than extended child's pose. So typically the knees kind of splay out to the edges of your mat. Your toes come together to touch, and your arms are going to outstretch as you pour down to your brow. Now just let your elbows rest to the floor as well. Feel free to close your eyes and begin giving yourself a breathing treatment. So we know forward folds can be calming, but so can diaphragmatic breathing. So practice your diaphragmatic breaths now. Breathing in and out thoroughly through the nose. Remembering that when we're resting on the third eye, there's an acupressure point here that also helps to induce some mental peace. Turn all your concentration to your breath. Any sustained focus on one object or one task at hand can become a meditation. The more we meditate, the more we can put it into practice. This is the supreme yoga. Notice how this pose helps to stretch the tops of the feet, the front of the ankles. It brings a lot of flexion to the knees. A little stretch to the inner thighs. Some work for the hips and some traction to the back. On your next inhale, let's go ahead and start to shift our weight forward and close the knees so they're more parallel with one another. Curl your toes and go ahead and lift up into downward facing dog. When you arrive to downward facing dog, really plug the feet and the hands down into the earth. Fly your seat high up in the air and let your head bow between the arms. Take one more deep breath. Make it a cleansing breath. Exhale through the mouth. And then casually just step the feet forward towards the top of the mat. And once you arrive, you're going to bend your knees. And when you bend your knees, I want to share with you that this is one of the poses, dangling pose, that I would do in those long lines when we were waiting for the rides, because there were lots of rides that were breaking down. It didn't surprise me because we were in the shadow effect of Mercury in retrograde, and that tends to mess with things that are electronic. And what I did was I just leaned into the railing or into the wall, and I bent my knees and I just folded over. Not only did it open up the back of the legs, it helped to increase the space in the low back area, the place that was causing me a lot of pain and achiness. But also notice when you're pouring down, let your neck release, and the blood flow comes down into the brain. It can be a refreshment and a replenishment for the mind. And that was also very helpful. Now, the arms can hang down like a rag doll, of course, but you can also grip a hold of the elbows to make the upper body slightly heavier. Take some deep breaths. And you may notice that you naturally want to extend the exhalations. And that is something you can promote in forward folds. Let's take a few more deep breaths. Now on your next inhalation, we're going to go ahead and push down heavily through the soles of the feet, straighten out through the leg bones, stack your hands onto your shins, pick the head and the heart up, extend long through the vertebrae like Ardha Uttanasana. Keep your legs long and structured for now. And this is where we're going to find the blocks and place them underneath the hands. Line the hands and the blocks up underneath the shoulders and ensure that your hips are elevated over the ankles of the feet. Now from here, keep the belly kind of hugging in towards your back body, your neck reaching out so you're looking just past your blocks. Take one more deep breath here and feel free to be stacked on the fingertips if flat palms is too much for you. And then we're going to open up the iliotibial band, the outseam of the legs. So let's go ahead and bend the left knee. And you're going to keep the left heel resting on your mat. So the right leg stays structured and the right foot stays heavy. The left knee is bent, that loosens the muscles, and you're resting very lightly on that particular foot. Now keep your hands stacked on the blocks for now. We're going to move ourselves into a twist. So take your right hand off the block, slowly circle it out and up towards the ceiling above. When you rotate open, spread the fingers wide on the top hand. As you exhale, lower the right hand back to the block. You're welcome to stay here where we started, left knee bent, right leg straight, or you can fold deeper into the fold. And if you relax your arms down and close your belly towards your thighs and let the head free fall down, you'll find that that activates that IT band even more. The IT band tends to get really taut and tight whenever we are repetitive with certain actions. For instance, runners or cyclists have really tight IT bands, but so do people who are more sedentary, maybe driving a lot, or even frequent flyers that are always having to, take flights here, there, and everywhere. So this is a good place to open up the body. Now on your next inhale, go ahead and straighten and structure both legs. Slide your hands back to your shins. Take Ardha Uttanasana. Press down firmly through the four corners of the feet. Shine the heart forward and out. And we'll take those blocks again, stacking them under the shoulders. This time we'll soften the right knee, keeping the heel resting on the mat. Left foot stays heavily rooting. So right leg's passive, left leg is active. So we're doing a blend today. We're pausing here just to warm it up. And then we'll incorporate that twist. So let's slowly carry the left arm out and up towards the hands. Instead of letting the head drop down towards the floor, keep the sides of the neck long. The neck in line with the rest of the vertebrae. Couple more breaths. Exhale, lower the left hand down. And this is where you can stay here, stacked on the blocks, or you can move them slightly forward and bow out. Right knee stays bent. Left leg's gonna stay straight. Notice where you feel sensitivity on this side. For some of us, we feel it more up in the hip area. For some of us, we may feel it closer down to the knee. And this IT band goes back to the gallbladder meridian. So anything that's been, at least psychologically speaking, it could be things that are irritating us or galling us, upsetting us in some way. It's not always tied into what we're doing physically. Now on your next in breath, straighten out both legs, lift through both knees, slide your hands back to your shins, come to Ardha Uttanasana. Picking the head up, getting it a little bit more level, less blood flow pouring down. And then we'll plant the palms and step into our plank position. Now from our plank position, get your arms long and strong. As you exhale, land your knees. Untuck the toes. Inhale, spill the hips, but not to the floor. Keep them elevated. And draw the crown of the head upward like up dog. Curl your toes. Use your navel center to pull back to downward facing dog. Now this is part of our active flow. We're going to do that 2 more times. Inhale, come forward to plank. Exhale, descend down to your knees, untuck the toes. Inhale, create your back bend. Exhale, curl the toes, draw in through the navel, and take your time rolling back to downward facing dog. All right, 1 more of those. Inhale, come forward to plank. Exhale to knees, tops of the feet. Inhale to upward facing dog. Exhaling to downward facing dog. Now let's take a cleansing breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Now lift your head and sink down to one forearm and then the other. And then let the head bow back down and push back into dolphin. Now, if the forearms being parallel is too challenging, you can always draw the palms together, lace your hands to make it a little easier. But we are going to come out of dolphin and down to the knees. Untuck the toes. We're going to do our cats and cows today from this position. So as you inhale, sink the belly, open the heart. And as you exhale, scoop the belly in and bow your head. Do that a few more rounds and sync with your breath. And then neutralize your spine. We're going to come back up to table, curl the toes, launch into downward facing dog. And we're going to move into a hip stretch. So if you bring your left knee and shin to the top of the mat like pigeon or swan, as we call it in yin. If this doesn't work well for your body, plop onto your left hip, slide your right knee up, and you're welcome to come forward to deer. That could be better for your pelvic floor. It may be better for your knees. You can also flip on your back, cross your left ankle over the right knee. And of course, if this variation of swan works, what you're going to do to start off with is you're going to square the hips, stack onto your palms, and lean forward. And I promise we're going to melt down in a minute, but we're just going to start the sequence here. If you're in one of the other variations, just do it your way. Close the eyes. And I want you to pay attention and set your concentration on where you're feeling the work. If you're still on the stilts of the arms in this form of swan, Try dropping into prayer hands now. If that's too much, you can come back up. But I want you to notice how this has a different focus. This has a different feel. Notice there's more sensation coming away from the hip and more into the knee. You may even feel it into your calf. The reason why I want you to check in to see where you're sensing and feeling it in these stages is so that you know that whenever you're starting to feel achy or a certain part of the body's becoming problematic, you will know which level to move into to work specifically into that area. And there's benefits to all of them. If you're still good there and want to melt all the way down, feel free to take it lower. And notice how it affects that front leg now. Yoga is the sustained concentration on one object or task at hand. On your next in-breath, we'll slowly start to back away. Now we're going to come to tabletop. So if you plant your palms and breathe, oh man, whew, that left knee back to join the right. We're going to move into thread the needle. We're going to take that left arm and kind of circle it off to the side. And stop it where you feel the restriction and thread and loop it underneath the right arm. Once you come down to that area just behind your left ear, press into your right hand, roll a little bit more towards the shoulder blade. Keep the navel kind of piercing in towards the spine. Puff into the left rib cage behind you. And we're doing it actively now, but we're going to move into a state of surrender next. So there's two ways to do this pose. We're being active now. And then we're going to start to slowly pour down to the left temple and cheekbone. And once you face plant down, move your right forearm ahead of you and just let your weight descend down to the left arm, and your belly can just sag towards the floor. And this is the more passive variation, the yin form. Close your eyes. Once you relax into it, your focus can return back to your breath. Now let's slide the right hand back. Come to tabletop. Walk your hands slightly forward. We're joining back to downward facing dog. So once you join me in downward facing dog, we're going to go back through that little vinyasa we started with. So inhale, come forward, plank. Exhale, down to knees, tops of the feet. Inhale, up dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. And that twice more. Inhale, forward plank. Exhale, knees, tops of the feet. Inhale, open the heart. Exhale, roll it on back. We'll do one more. Inhale, come forward, plank. Exhale, knees, tops of the feet. Inhale, extend the spine. And exhale, rock and roll back. Let's take a cleansing breath in through the nose. Pour it out through the mouth. Now lift your head. Come back to forearms. Remember, it's a little easier if you grip your hands together, but then we push back away from the hands for dolphin. Keeping the upper body nice and strong. Exhale, spill down to the knees. Separate your hands. Come back to forearms being parallel. Take the back bend. Exhale, cat stretch. Just a couple more rounds. Inhale, neutralize the spine and come to tabletop. Exhale, downward facing dog. So we're going to move back towards a yin pose, opening the right hip this time. So if you want swan for this side, which is similar to pigeon, you can set up for that, except your hands will be forward and you'll slightly lean ahead. If you need deer, drop onto the right hip, slide your left knee in and pour over this direction. Or of course you can turn onto your back, right ankle over the left knee. So I'll let you choose, even though I'm instructing from swan. Close the eyes. Feel that sensation kind of swirling through the side of the hip. Soften your jaw and the expression from the face. Maybe sinking to prayer hands. Noticing how it changes the pose, where the sensation shifts. If your body is still accepting of this, try surrendering fully. Be with it. Breathe into it. Inhale, we'll slowly lift. And we'll return to tabletop. Ooh, y'all. I needed that in my hips, but that's making me slow moving. We're gonna come to thread the needle now. So the right arm will come up and out. We'll thread and loop it underneath the left arm, sinking to that area above or slightly behind the ear, pushing into the left hand, rolling towards the right shoulder blade, squeezing in through the belly. Starting off active. Make sure you're not doing so much physically that it blocks your breath. Now let's surrender. Come down to the left forearm, the left cheekbone and temple. And just drop your weight into the right arm. Let your belly sag. So in that active form, it was more of a rhythmic breath. Here in the relaxed version, you have a longer, slower out breath. Slide your left hand in. Slowly unwind from that. And we're gonna grab our two blocks. And you're gonna set them up long way, side by side. You're gonna sit back towards your heels. You're gonna have to kind of play around with the distance, but what we're attempting to do here is stack the elbows on top of the blocks. The palms are joining into namaste hands, but then we're releasing the head between the arms. If this is too much for your knees, know that you could do this from a seat of a chair. My back's gonna be turned to you. Actually, I could do it this way, just to kind of give you a visual. You can always be more like a tabletop and do it like this, if that's a better alternative for you. This will stretch out those side lats. One more breath. And then we're going to come up. Now, if you'd like, you can already set up the blocks on their tall height. We'll get to that in a moment. We're going to come onto a seat and we're going to do the double pigeon or fire log. So if you bring your left shin in front of you, And carry your right calf. And you're stacking the knees and ankles. However, this doesn't work for everyone. If it's too lopsided or awkward, or if it's painful, it's more important to have the left shin parallel to your body, and then you can set the right foot over to the forward side. Okay, that works just as well. And then if you push down through the fingertips and energetically lift up through the crown of your head, I'm already feeling this. Hopefully you are too. So this kind of goes to show you don't really have to do much more. But if you're wanting to add extra, you can start to hinge forward. And if you start to hinge forward enough, you may even want your bolster in front to rest the forearms on, or to again come to prayer hands. So I can tell my body's not wanting to stay where I placed it. And if you start to experience that, listen to your body. Back up if you need to. Let go of expectations, even the ones you place on yourself. All right, inhale, we're slowly going to climb up. And then we need to reverse the placement of the legs. So since the left shin was at the bottom, move it out of the way, replace it with the right, and then carry the left on top. Again, if it's too awkward or if it hurts, it's not worth it. Just drop the left foot over. That should alleviate it. If not, just come into like a cross-legged position. That's better. Start just lining up, checking in. And then if you want to hinge, you may. If your body allows, go to your next edge. So I don't know about you, but the month of June was, well, I've been talking about amusement rides this week. It felt like an emotional roller coaster, at least for me. We had the eclipses, we had that super full moon, and it may have been drudging some things up. The good news is we've moved into July. There's going to be some new energies coming in. And hopefully your awareness has noticed how you can go to the root cause or pinpoint where some of these things may stem from. I was listening to kind of the forecast of July, and it was saying July is about nurturing your inner child, basically mothering yourself. So maybe being a question, besides your yoga, how are you taking care of you? What other ways can you nurture yourself? And we'll slowly back away from that position. If you have that bolster in front of you, go ahead and stack it on top of those blocks for Stonehenge. If it's not accessible right now, don't worry about it because you probably need a counter. Lean back into your hands, take hammock pose. You can wave your feet in and out, or you can just be here in stillness. Just let that flush out of your hips. You can even bounce the knees. You can even bend the knees and take a twist from side to side. So any combination of those will work as a nice counter. And then we'll just scoot forward for our resting position today. And like I said, just if you have a chair, you don't even need Stonehenge. You can just prop your legs up to a chair. Let's have the hands resting on the belly. Broaden your upper back and shoulders. Take a few deep diaphragmatic breaths. Remembering this can aid digestion, help us when we're feeling nauseous, and also works as a calming agent. You may perhaps notice sensation still swirling in the hips from that previous pose. But I'd rather you put your attention into your feet and toes. And while you're at rest in today's Savasana, let your hands resting on your belly help you to ground down. But send your concentration to your feet. This is one of the primary areas of the body in which we start to connect and feel energy. They may feel light and airy. They may experience a tingling sensation. You might feel it bubble up. You may feel nothing at all. But let your concentration be set here at your feet.
Drift towards the recesses of your mind where there's less thinking. Slowly begin to draw the knees, cup them in with your arms. Roll to one side of your body. Come on up to take a seat. Bringing your hands to Anjali Mudra. Yoga is sustained focus, and hopefully you were able to sustain your focus through different periods in this practice. Remember, yoga can be practiced off the mat. So let's take the lessons learned here with us as we depart. The light in me honors and bows to the beautiful light within each of you. Namaste.